Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And like a hopeless addict, every single day since Friday I have been waking up at 5 AM. No, not to do something productive with my life, and that would be healthy, wouldn't it? No, to check out Wargaming's black market. Before today, I was completely disappointed getting things like the Sexton, getting things like the Panzer IIJ, getting things like the Alpine Tiger, but today finally it was worth it. And that's because Wargaming sold the Panzer V4, which cost 5,500 gold, and for some reason it hasn't sold all of its allotted units, I guess because that's quite a large price for a tier 5 tank, but not for a rarity such as this vehicle. There's only about 3,000 to 4,000 of these on the European server, and that's because unless you have the Panzer V4 Alpha version, which I think you probably have to be on the Russian server to be able to get, unless you're a Wargaming staff member that was given to people who really helped Wargaming's development of the game in the alpha testing phases a long time ago. I think that this vehicle was only available for those who pre-purchased the game on the European server back in 2011, when you bought $50 worth of gold for a game that you didn't even think was probably going to last about a couple of weeks back then. But ha, you'll be laughing all the way until now for having this little monster at tier 5. Well, right up until this day where Wargaming pretty much just went back on that kind of promise a little bit and gave it to everyone who had 5,500 gold lying in their garage. So, the Panzer V4 Alpha, sorry, I'm probably going to make that mistake a few times. It's just the Panzer V4 is an absolute monster at tier 5, and today I'm going to show you exactly why. So let's compare it to the Panzer III-4 and the Panther M10. That's a tier 7 premium American cosplay Panther tank that we're going to be checking it out against. So immediately we notice that all of these vehicles use 75mm guns, which pretty much all of the kind of like the low tier and mid tier German tanks use, right? But not all 75mm caliber guns are equal, and that's because the Panther M10 has increased alpha damage and increased penetration. But immediately we notice the Panzer V4 compared to its standard tier 5 competition just has better DPM. Now on to gun handling. Alright, better aim time than both of these vehicles. Better accuracy than the III-4, but substantially worse accuracy than the tier 7 premium tank, the Panther M10. It's got better dispersion when moving, better dispersion when turning the turret than the III-4, and better dispersion when, turning the tank and turning the turret than both the III-4 and also the M10. Now this vehicle has 10 degrees of gun depression, but I hasten to highlight that this vehicle only has 10 degrees of gun depression over the side of the vehicle. Wow, look at that, covering for this slow website loading. So check it out. The Panzer Kampfwagen V4, has 8 degrees of gun depression over the front of the vehicle and 10 degrees over the side. So if you want to get even more out of this vehicle, you're going to have to expose a little bit of that side armor, but more on that in a second. So all in all, pretty good gun handling statistics for a tier 5 vehicle, which has preferential matchmaking, by the way. This thing never has to meet tier 7 tanks. Now on to mobility. This vehicle goes at 55 forwards, a lot like the other tanks, 20 backwards, and it's got a great power to weight ratio, which is better than the Panther M10, although it's not quite as good as the III-4, so keep that in mind. Its ground resistances are also the best in this comparison, and its tank traverse is not too bad at all, and while it does have the worst effective traverse speed and much worse than the III-4, really this doesn't mean too much apart from not being able to swing that big old hull around to face your opponents. Now talking about big old hull, this is a Panther hull at tier 5, ladies and gents. Just outrageous. 85mm of frontal armor and 40 at the side means that you can side scrape in this tank against anything that doesn't have a 122mm caliber gun. And you've also got a little bit of spaced armor over the side of the hull here, so it makes it even better against mid-caliber rounds. Angling the vehicle like this makes it very impressive because that 85mm of frontal armor now becomes able to bounce pretty much everything equal tier and lower. And considering that it does have preferential matchmaking, yeah, that happens quite a lot. But one thing that does suck about this tank is the turret. Yeah, its turret is just tragic. Thickest at 100 here, the cheeks are 50, and it's got this big old weak point on top that, yeah, while you're maybe going to bounce off it occasionally, most of the time it's going to be a nice, easy shot into the vehicle as it's trying to use its gun depression over a ridgeline. But nevertheless, this is fantastic armor for a tier 5 tank. And when you combine this with the fact that the vehicle has 520 hit points, 40 more than the III-4, of course, nothing compared to the Panther M10. This thing is an utter monster at tier 5. And finally, let me highlight how much this tank weighs. 40 tons at tier 5. Yeah, you know, these lower tier tanks are usually quite small unless you're going to plan on ramming something like an OI on the enemy team. You are going to absolutely destroy them. Combine that with something like controlled impact on your driver, and then, well, I wouldn't recommend it. A spall liner, and this thing could be just truly monstrous. You'd be ramming tanks to death with a single collision. In addition to this, the vehicle has a decent view range of 365 meters, just 15 meters better than the 3.4 and the same as this tier 7 premium vehicle. And you're beginning to see why, statistically, like if I just take the Panther M10 away, you see a lot of red here and hardly any green, right, ladies and gents? This is a terrifying vehicle that's completely better than all of its regular tier counterparts, and it has preferential matchmaking. I think you might see where I'm going with this. Anyway, let's get stuck into some gameplay. So here we go, we're rolling out on airfield and we are in a rather nice matchup here, but when I say rather nice, this is fairly normal for the tank when there are 5 equal tier opponents and 10 lower tier opponents. When you're walking around with 520 hit points and having the rather impressive damage per minute that this vehicle has, yeah, you know you're in for a treat. Now this vehicle has 5 crew members, and so you're going to be able to use your Leopard 1 crew in here, or either your E50M crew, if that is more your thing. And so it's just an absolute fantastic crew train as well, because obviously these low tier vehicles do make increased experience just for playing a low tier premium tank. Alright, so we're playing on airfield. Where am I going to go? Well, clearly I'm going to try and go into where I think the most important location on the map is. I'm going to stop for just a second, see if we can engage the Matilda, and we go right through the side of his hull armor. That Matilda, goodness gracious, that's a scary tier 4 tank. But this thing really starts to make even a Matilda look rather tragic when I think about it. Even though you're at tier 5 rather than tier 4, the fact that you just can't meet tier 7 tanks just makes this thing consistently playing against all of the puppies. Usually vehicles that have preferential matchmaking in World of Tanks have horrendous drawbacks on other statistics about the vehicle that just make them rather useless. This vehicle doesn't really have that condition. Alright, so one thing that you're going to notice me doing in this vehicle is I'm quite often going to just leave my frontal hull around the corner, because I'm going to try and bait the shots from my opponents. But the Valentine, on the other hand, looks like he just bypassed my hull armor and went right through my turret, if you can see the penetration just under the mantlet there. And that's what you should do when you fight these things, and there are a lot of them in the matchmaker right now. If you're a mid-tier player, do not shoot these things in the hull. It's a big old hull, it's a Panther hull for goodness sake. You want to shoot these things in the turret. And the turret just feels like it's a fairly easy thing to hit. It's so wide and it's got the big weakness on the top as well. And while you will be able to penetrate these things in the hull if you're maybe a tier 6 tank with decent penetration, or alternatively you're willing to fire premium rounds at them, you're still probably better to go for the lower plate. But as I mentioned, just shoot these things in the turret. Don't be baited into shooting their hull armor. I kind of play this thing a bit like the Panzer 7. That's weird, right? The Panzer 7 at tier 10 has fantastic frontal hull armor, and quite often I'll just stick it round the corner to try and bait the enemy into shooting, and then I'll come round myself and punish them. Talking about punishing, we put a round right through the mini turret on the front of that OI. It looks like our artillery does a little bit more damage to the tier 5 Japanese heavy tank. Now the Valentine tries to trade with me, but this time doesn't manage to hit me in the turret. Looks like it bounces right off the hull, and we punish that Valentine. The alpha damage on this vehicle, well, it's not ever super impressive. You can't call 110 millimeters of penetration and alpha damage super impressive. It's definitely not tragic. And considering the rate of fire of this vehicle, when you put a good crew on it, and you got things like Brothers in Arms, and if you're like me, wanting to put some chocolate to feed that crew up to push the DPM even a little bit higher, combine that with vents, combine that with a gun rammer, and this thing does become a bit of a monster. So luckily for me, the OI Experimental misses the top of my vehicle, and right now I'm just trying to go to town on every opponent that we have in front of us here. And as long as I can keep my frontal armor against my opponents and kind of like lock them in place here, we should be fairly good. Alright, the Panzer 38 NA kills the Churchill, I finish off the Valentine, and I push forwards and I put one right into the side of that Matilda, and our artillery looks like he splashes the AMX, but I'll pick up a triple, right? Nice triple kill there. And luckily for me, it looks like this Lux is getting into an awkward position. But oh, look at that! A Panzer 5.4 on the enemy team as well, who narrowly misses us, but exposes himself. So I'm hoping that my team are going to be able to shoot the Panzer 5.4 a little bit, while I finish off the Lux. So the Panzer 5.4 does take a hit from the artillery. Now he's down to a one-shot. So hopefully that's going to lessen his impact in this game. But he's already up to 3 kills, so we're going to have to see whether it works out for him. Sorry, don't check your Outlook. That's me being a potato. I was checking my emails just before I was making this video. Apologies for that. Alright, so look, I could stay sitting up in that location, but the OI Experimental could come round and just dirt me, and maybe I get unlucky, or maybe he's got enough hit points to be able to take multiple shots, and I don't really want to trade there. So instead, I want to try and take advantage of what I think my advantages will be, and that is my mobility, my long-range capacity, especially with the premium rounds on this vehicle. The premium rounds on this vehicle have 158 millimeters of penetration. Not bad for tier 5, right? But more importantly, that 365 meters of view range that I have, combine that with decent cruise skills, and I know that I'm going to be able to outspot my opponents at long range. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to use the mobility of the vehicle to swing round here and try and catch out the Matilda 4 and the OI Experimental at a decent distance. Because if I can do that, then hopefully I can shut them down and I can turn it into an engagement which is more in my favor than an engagement where I'm just fighting in close quarters combat. Talking about close quarters combat, well, we're not really fighting here quite at close quarters. The Matilda 4, we put one in, and the excellent dispersion values on the move there. That 0.12 dispersion when moving, that 0.08 when turning the turret, means that we can shoot one through the gap in the rocks to pick up our 5th kill against the Matilda. Talking about 5 kills, the Panzer 5-4 on the enemy team just went from 5 to 6, killing our Panzer 38 NA. He's got 3 kills, even though he's been a one-shot. This OI Experimental is making his way over the ridge, and I just fluff a shot right up into the lower plate there. However, we put one in, and luckily for me, as long as I don't choke that shot, well, that was a pressure shot, wasn't it? If I hadn't penetrated the OI Experimental there, then he would have rammed me, because I think that thing weighs like 100 tons or 150 tons at tier 5. Like, there are heavy tanks. And then there's like OI Experimentals at low tier, right? That's something that you don't want to get rammed by. Alright, so now this game is starting to look really hot. Look at this. The Panzer 5-4 on the enemy team is now up to 7 kills. He's got 4 kills even though he's been a one-shot, so well played to him. And I'm on 7 kills as well now, so it's a showdown at the end of the game. Luckily for me, the Bishop narrowly misses us, gives away his position, and I'm hoping that Lux is going to be able to flank the Bishop to be able to put some pressure up. Alright, so I just want to take this Bishop out quickly before the 5-4 goes for me, and you can see that I turn my vehicle to the side here so that I've got increased gun depression to be able to shoot the Bishop. Unfortunately for me, the guy derps me, and so I take a huge amount of hit points, which mean that I'm now a 2-shot for the Panzer 5-4, and the Lux takes the kill, so I don't get my Radley Walters medal. Alright, let's see if I'm going to regret that damage. Where's the 5-4? Maybe going to be up here on the ridge line. Okay, 5-4 spotted, puts one into me. He kills my gunner, so I can't swing the turret round, and he shoots me down. But luckily for me, the Lux had the side shot there. An absolute disaster for me there, boys and girls. I didn't react to that at all. He caught me by surprise. And the fact that my gunner died here meant that I couldn't swing my turret with its poor traverse when your gunner is dead and your poor aim time and accuracy to get the clean shot into the 5-4. Luckily for me, the Lux on my team called I Hate It managed to get the flanking play and finish off the Panzer 5-4 on the enemy team, who actually got 8 kills, picking up a Radley Walters medal. But yeah, ladies and gents, I think you can see where I'm going with these two vehicles. The fact that between us, we killed half of all of the players in this game. So half of the players in this game were killed by 2 out of 30 of the tanks. And while we didn't quite secure the Radley Walters medal like the 5-4 on the enemy team here, we still get ourselves a top gun, and this was an ace tanker for our 1,700 damage dealt for 1,240 base, and we still made 28,000 credits profit because we didn't fire too many premium rounds. We made 10,000 credits profit even without a premium account. So I had multiple ace tankers on this vehicle, multiple 1,000, 2,000 damage games even in bad matchmaking in this tank. Ladies and gents, this thing is monstrous, and it's a real surprise to me that all of these vehicles weren't sold, and I guess that's because of the vehicle's fairly high 5,500 credit price tag. This thing, it's just truly monstrous at tier 5, and this is where the dilemma comes for me. Sure, it was fun for me to be able to pick one of these up and experience what all of the original World of Tanks founders, the people who had the money back then, and I didn't. I had nothing to spend on this game back in 2012. I was just a poor student at the time. The idea of spending $50 on a free-to-play video game was baffling. I played the first 6 months to a year of this game completely for free. Yeah, ludicrous, the idea of spending money to be able to get one of these vehicles. Now, I would have just spent probably 10 times that much to be able to get this vehicle. So the dilemma is that while it's fun for me to be able to have this tank, after playing it for about 10 times and seeing how many of them were inside the matchmaker, just literally just chewing up all the low tiers, this is where I have to come to the downsides of Wargaming selling this. Number one, it is completely broken. Number two, a lot of the better players have picked up these vehicles, i.e. the collectors, and now they're just running riot and just killing all of the little low tier tanks, which is really not very healthy for the game to sell overpowered vehicles for large amounts of gold to give the best players an advantage at tiers that really they shouldn't be playing, right? And also that selling this vehicle is a slap in the face to everybody who were confident enough in World of Tanks to pre-purchase the game, to put down that $50 and to get rewarded for it. And now they feel that what they believed was going to be an exclusive for the duration of the game's life is now available to a hell of a lot more players. And so all in all, while I personally am completely conflicted about this vehicle and also about the black market in general, I hope all of you enjoyed this look at a very rare vehicle in World of Tanks. And also that you're going to be seeing these a lot in the matchmaker. Boys and girls, shoot them in the turret. Shoot them in the turret, take out those gold noobs and slap them in the turret. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about the 5.4 being inside the black market. And also, if you have any ideas about what vehicles might be coming in the final remaining days for Wargaming's event. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.